Hello, I'm Bret and you're watching The Defining Moment for Creating the Culture of Conscience. Our guest today is Lowell Mitchem. Lowell is a middle school teacher at Bethune Middle School in South Central Los Angeles. He's also an ambassador for peace to Afghanistan with the Universal Peace Federation. Mr. Mitchem has a bachelor's degree in history and a master's degree in urban planning from the University of Colorado and a Master of Religious Education from the Unification Theological Seminary in upstate New York. Lowell is married and has 3 children. Lowell Mitchem, it's my pleasure to welcome you today to The Defining Moment. Thanks for being our guest.
It's my pleasure, Bret.
Welcome to the show. Our topic today will be Afghanistan. And Lowell, I'd like to begin by asking you to share with our viewers a defining moment in your life which gave you a new perspective or opened up a new direction for you in your life.
Okay. This happened on January 2nd of 1996.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things you didn't expect to happen, but I'm glad it did. I'd moved back to my hometown of Denver, Colorado, and never had a chance to sled with my son, who was 9 years old at the time.
You have wonderful snow in Denver, right?
That's right. And I used to live right across from a golf course that had a beautiful hill that was just perfect. It was safe. You weren't out on the street. Very safe for sledding. And so we went there sledding, and it was very cold that day, about 5 below zero, but it had snowed the night before. It was beautiful. And it was we had a great time, but near the end, some of the kids would shout, "Why don't you try one more time?" When we were ready to go, and my son was also encouraging me one more time, the best run. So I tried one more time, and I guess I didn't look close enough on the hill how it was laid, and I went over like the storage shed, and I went about 20 feet in the air, and then I landed the middle of my back, and found myself at that time completely paralyzed. I could not move. And it's like in my heart I heard a voice saying, well, I finally got your attention.
And so that felt almost like a voice from God in a sense.
Yes, I took it for a voice for God, or the God within me. You know, when you were young, you wanted to do something for the world, not waste your life, do something for humanity in some kind of capacity. And but you haven't done much yet.
What were you doing at the time in your life when that accident happened?
My profession at that time was light rail train operator. I graduated from a bus driver for the Denver Regional Transportation. And I got that job because I moved back home. I spent about 12 years in missionary work, and because I started a family and had young children, I needed a steady income. Yeah. And at that time, that was the best job I can get. And actually, I didn't like it.
You weren't happy.
It was very miserable. I felt I was those tracks on the light rail train. All they needed to do is dig between them, put my body in there, and that would be my life.
You imagine the rest of your life riding that train.
Yes.
And so how many years had you been between being a bus driver and light train rail operator?
About 8 years.
8 years.
Yeah. And so also I felt in my heart, say, there's going to be a special opportunity this year if you choose to try and do something more exciting with your life and maybe help somebody in the process.
And so that was also while you were lying there in the snow.
Yeah. Remember, I told you it was very cold, but I felt all of a sudden very warm. And it would have been very cloudy, but I felt like a bright light around me. So I was at peace, even though my back was in very much pain. Yeah. And I couldn't move. And so, but it made such a
So for you, it was much more than just an accident snow sledding. This was actually God trying to reach out to you.
Reminding me that we all are mortal. That we all at some time at the end of our life we're going to face, what did we do with the precious moments that we had on earth?
Yeah.
So it's one of those times that I can easily reflect. And so the message sort of seemed to say, something this year is going to happen. Be ready for it. And if you decide to do it, it'll probably be good for you. So I prepared for something, and then...
so you knew something was coming, and were you able to... how difficult was it for you to recover from the sledding accident?
Well, it took a lot of great will, because my son was only 9 years old, and I just thought, well, what a terrible experience that'd be for him if his father just died right here. And we were new to the neighborhood. He probably didn't know how to get home. We were far enough home he didn't know how to get home or how to, So
that was your most immediate concern,
yes.
lying there in the snow.
So I decided, well, since there's going to be some life in me, I'm going to will myself to walk back to the car and, so my son wouldn't be embarrassed with having the police come or something like that. And, the ambulance or that kind of stuff. So I made it somehow back to the car after a slow walk, a determined walk. It wasn't easy. And eventually I went to a chiropractor, and it gradually healed. I had to take a few days off from work. But after about 3 or 4 days, I got better.
Okay, so then a few months later, something did come to you.
Yes.
Which this incident had prepared you for.
That's
essentially.
Right. It was about 7 months later, I received a mail from the Women's Federation for World Peace at that time. And they were making a new dispensation trying to have a representative of every country in the world to try and serve mankind through this peace movement. And that's what I originally wanted to do when I was young. I wanted to better mankind somehow. I wanted it to be a better place when I left and help somebody along the way to make their life easier. So I knew this was it as soon as I saw the letter. Other people that had been with the movement for a long time, actually I thought they're much more qualified than me, they chose not to do it. But I felt a calling, so
this meant going to another country and essentially living there and sacrificing,
trying to find a way to serve. And it was good because the country that I was given was Afghanistan, which for me, I like to serve something that's not so easy. It's easy to serve those people that have the same beliefs and understand as you are, but or your friends. But somebody you don't know, foreign country, different language, that's more dramatic.
Yeah, well, I think all of us would agree that for an American to go to Afghanistan, it's a tremendous challenge involved in that.
And the thought even came to me in the process of selecting countries. Probably Afghanistan's the country just naturally I'd least like to go to.
Right.
Because it is having so many difficulties and had for quite some time.
Yeah, and so that's the one you got.
Yeah, so...
And this was even before the war in the September 11th. And
this is a good 4 years before 9/11. Yeah.
So it's even become more dramatic since you were assigned to that country.
It made me realize you better watch out what you pray for, because sometimes I pray for things that have happened, and I'm not sure if it's such a good idea. But many good things happen too. Yeah. Interesting.
So tell us about your experiences the first time you traveled to Afghanistan.
Okay, I first went to India because already the Women's Federation had been established there in New Delhi. And there was 50,000 Afghanistans. And at the time, as we all know now, the Taliban were in a civil war with Mr. Rabini, who was the elected president of Afghanistan. So there's a lot of conflict, a civil war going on in Afghanistan. So there was many Afghanistan refugees from the communist days and after that were living in New Delhi. So there was some base with Afghanistan people there. And Then from there, I went to Peshawar, Pakistan, and was intending to go to Afghanistan at that time. I had a visa to go, but when I got near the border, I was stopped by the Pakistani police.
They wouldn't let you cross.
They said there was some difficulties, and you had to have a special visa beyond your normal visa in order to cross the border at that time. So I couldn't make it, but I had a chance the first time to go visit some of the Afghani refugee camps that were in Peshawar.
Okay.
And ever since 1979, I guess, since the Soviet invasion, there's been millions of refugees in Pakistan from Afghanistan. And unfortunately, they have not had good conditions. It was like living in a tent or a little mud house, many times without any roof over your head.
And this is for years at a time.
20 years. You know, so a whole generation of young people, basically they had no chance for an education at all. So, and there was many graveyards there. Probably more people were dead in the graveyard than were still living in these refugee camps.
Wow.
And so you could see how much Afghanistan people suffered as a result of the communist invasion of 1979. So I was really moved to tears when I saw the condition of my fellow human beings.
Yeah.
And yet, especially among the young people, there was such a bright light. And I was really humbled by how you could see they had hope for the future. Even though they grew up in such terrible circumstances, they were so happy and grateful for their lives.
Wow.
Many of the older people were, of course, depressed and because they had experienced better days. But I was really inspired by the young people. But I was still moved by the poverty and the suffering. And I saw this beautiful, nicely painted white little mosque there in one of the refugee camps. And I felt compelled to go in and try and pray because, you know, I'm just one human being like everybody else.
Right.
And
so what can you do to
what
solve
can
this
I
kind
do
of suffering, right?
Just, you know, and quite honestly, as a bus driver and a light rail train operator, you don't make a lot of money, survival money.
Yeah.
It's a paycheck to paycheck, you know.
Sure.
A job just above broke. So I didn't have outstanding resources to help. So I had a good prayer, and I really felt a warm spirit, and I felt God was moved. But I was asking, what can I do? How can I help God? You know, I come from a different background from these folks, and yet they're human beings too. They're still your children.
Right.
And so I had a good prayer. And when I came out, I was so shocked. There were about 50 Afghani men lined up outside the mosque waiting for me to finish my prayer.
You're kidding.
I hadn't seen anybody when I went in.
Oh my gosh.
And there was no windows in the mosque.
Wow.
Though there was some light from above so you can see inside.
So what was that like?
Well, I thought, well, so this is the Taliban. And I couldn't hide the fact that I looked pretty much like an American.
Right.
And I didn't speak any language. But I was there with one Afghani person that spoke English. His name was, he was a very young man at the time, Mr. Latafi, whose father used to be in the military before the communists. And he was able to interpret for me. So we sat down together. They got tea, and we talked. And they asked me, what was I doing in the refugee camp?
You sat down together with all 50 of them?
Yes,
Wow.
Afghani people are very communal, you know, just like Indian people. You know, they like a crowd, and they like to discuss things in a group.
Wow.
It's a different mentality. We're more loners here in the United States, or we talk to one person at a time, but they're more communal.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's more Asian kind of way. And so we had a discussion, and they said, what was I doing here in the refugee camp? And I said, well, I wasn't sure if they were friendly or not yet. If you're going to die, you might as well go out with a blast. So I said, I felt God called me to help your country of Afghanistan, but I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure what I can do. And they talked it over among themselves, and they were sure what I can do. They said, if you want to help Afghanistan, you need to educate our children.
Wow.
And they informed me that, there had been a whole generation of Afghanistan children, not just in the refugee camps, but also in Afghanistan too, that had no education at all. Their infrastructure was completely destroyed.
A whole generation.
A whole 20 years.
20 years.
A whole score had passed and no educational system.
Unbelievable. Unless
you had money in in Pakistan, well, you probably wouldn't be in the refugee camp anyway.
Yeah.
There was no opportunity for an education. And life was so brutish, and the parents were so stressed, just try and survive. They had no time to be able to educate their children. So, and the spirit was really one like fellowship. It was like God was there. God is concerned about the people of Afghanistan more than I am. And He sees them as His children more than I do. And we felt that. It was really like we were family.
Wow.
Even though they spoke a different language and wore unusual clothes for me, and I looked strange to them.
Yes.
Is we really had a very beautiful spirit. And they even said, if you want to come right now, we'll set you up right here in our little refugee camp, and we'll make space for you so you can start teaching the children today.
Wow.
So their willingness, and they knew I wasn't a Muslim.
Right.
Okay, but they were willing. They were so desperate their children get an education.
Yeah.
So this is really, I think, a very critical thing that can help the people of Afghanistan if we individually, not necessarily relying on the U.S. government, but make an effort to reach out to help raise up Afghanistan so they can stand as a free and dignified nation.
I understand. Yeah, I understand that the illiteracy rate is very high in Afghanistan.
Yeah, as much. I'm not sure right today because there are a lot of attempts to create schools, but I know millions of young people still have no opportunity across Afghanistan.
So that's one way that America can contribute.
Yeah.
But
back there in '97, about 90% of Afghanistan was illiterate. So there's a lot to do as far as basic education. And this is one aspect why they've been able to listen to so many strange ideas that have nothing to do with the Muslim faith from the extremists like Osama bin Laden, who has his own agenda, the terrorist kind of agenda.
I want to talk about perceptions that Americans have about Afghanistan. I feel that the average American kind of feels that Americans are not well liked in that part of the world. Many of us imagine that maybe something like 90% of Afghanistans hate Americans, the Afghani people. What is your experience of having been over there?
Okay, I was able to go over there not this summer, but the summer before, with a Afghani friend of mine, Mr. Abdul Akbar, and through an organization he helped found called EACH, Education for Afghan Children. We were able to raise about $20,000 to buy there in Kabul educational supplies for the biggest orphanage in Afghanistan. And so we were in the marketplace, and we saw head to head, the Afghani people, and I want to tell you, they're very friendly people. That there was not 90% of people, what are you doing here? It was, they were very glad I was there. They were very curious. Sometimes they just ask questions. What part of America are you from? And, they even shared, I wasn't there in a military capacity at all, but they said they made many friends with our Americans that were in uniform there. And you can tell there's a very strong rapport. It's not the same kind of hatred that the Afghani people had towards the Soviets when they occupied their nation. So my impression was 80% of the people were glad America was there. And the improvements that have been made, they were so grateful for. They're establishing a new road system. They are trying to do something for the schools. So my impression was they're ready to make a good, long-lasting relationship with the United States. Not that they're going to become Christians, but that they're not hostile to our nation per se.
Great. Share with us what other impressions of daily life in Afghanistan have you gotten? In other words, what would be most surprising to an American going to Afghanistan for the first time?
Well, we all know Afghanistan's not Los Angeles.
Right.
Okay. In a way, to me, it was like, I'm a historian. I teach social studies. And it's like going back thousands of years. Afghanistan is an ancient civilization with, Muslim is sort of a recent religion, only a couple thousand, less than 2,000 years influence there. But they have an ancient tradition, and in some ways it reminded me even of ancient Greece, the kind of how it might have been in the Agora, how men were talking to each other, not just doing marketplace, but they were so alive. They were so full of life that it just was a glimpse of what it might have been like, maybe in Israel 2,000 years ago, or Greece 2,500 years ago. Insight into the old traditional way of life, different kind of family values that were something we sometimes lose today.
Tell us more about that. I'm very interested to know about that.
Well, it's very often that, if a family's intact, 3-4 generations live together, and they support each other for everything. And it's a very rich family life. It's respect for elders, giving to the younger children. Actually, I thought, maybe in the end, we will learn more from this ancient culture that'll benefit us,
right,
than just us helping out when they're immediate broken down society that's been the result of civil war.
There seems to be something intact there that, in a sense, we've lost sight of here in America.
That's
in
right.
our very modern civilization, and that is the importance of the family as a building block of a society.
Exactly. So,
in a very substantial way.
I felt that, and here in America too, there are, many Afghanis that have fled since the communist days, and they too keep their family traditions. Often they still wear, in America, their traditional clothes too, but more important is how they haven't lost their family structure. And to tell you the truth, they're so warm and so rich and so vibrant. I think many of us would be very envious, not in a negative way, in a very joyful way, if our own families could be as solid and supporting and encouraging as I've seen among Afghani families in America or in Afghanistan.
Well, that's great. That's inspiring to know that's the reality over there, and that maybe we could benefit from learning something from their way of life. In the news a while back, we heard about a Muslim man in Afghanistan who converted to Christianity, and by virtue of that was given a death sentence. What needs to happen in Afghanistan in terms of religious freedom and tolerance toward other faiths?
Okay. First, we have to understand that traditionally that is a Muslim perspective in a Muslim country.
Not just Afghanistan.
Not just Afghanistan. It's the same in Pakistan now. If you convert from Muslim to Christianity, it's a death sentence if it was enforced. So it's the cultural situation, but also, you know, hopefully they can grow out of that. But also my own practices, my own personal experience is that people practice a lot better than what their law is.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I was in India, and I share with people my desire to help Afghanistan, people fed me food, they washed my clothes, they were so grateful, knowing full well I come from a Judeo-Christian background.
Yeah.
Is they had no animosity, no desire to kill me, that kind of thing.
Right.
Where sometimes in America, because my religious tradition, since I converted to Unification Church in 1976, I faced a lot of persecution by Christians.
You're a follower of Reverend Moon.
Yes. And so sometimes our practice, legally, we have religious rights, but even in America, a lot of times our practice is pretty intolerant. So we have.
So you've experienced that kind of intolerance here in America.
Yeah, I think it's a chance for us to reflect on ourselves.
Uh-huh.
You know, it's easy for us to point the finger at another culture, and especially when we don't understand, and it seems completely ridiculous. It seems totally intolerant.
Right.
Especially since America is the country of religious freedom.
Right.
So we just don't see it from their perspective. But on the other hand, we should look at ourselves better and realize that even here in America, are we tolerant of Muslims?
Mm-hmm.
We do hear sometimes that in our country that loves religious freedom, sometimes people taking their hands to burn down a mosque,
right,
or persecute someone because they're Jewish or not exactly like them. So it gives us also cause. What breeds tolerance in the world? Because our Muslim friends in the Central Asia, in the Middle East, are not going to go away. So I think the greater concern is what will lead to better understanding so we can all grow in better tolerance in our world.
As a human family.
As a human family.
Amongst all religions, amongst all cultures, how can we better embrace the diversity of all civilizations?
And among educated people in Afghanistan, you know, and I've met some. I went to a special peace initiative in the Middle East, and I met Mr. Taj Mulatmo, incredible personality. You know, he reminded me of a great Christian, even though he's Muslim, because he was a doctor that during Soviet times would go to every back village to take care of people. You know, when there was no structure. You know, such a heart to serve his fellow human beings and his countrymen, you know, and he was concerned in Jerusalem, how can Muslims and Jewish people, how can we overcome our ignorance towards each other? So there's a goodwill among many Muslims that are not terrorists, they're not narrow-minded, that seek goodwill. And same I found among Jewish people too in Israel. The vast majority of people want peace. And they even love their Muslim brothers and sisters. You know, it's a political problem that, you know, has to be overcome, you know, not just, and it can't be solved in political terms. It takes goodwill and a lot of effort on both parts. So
we have to kind of find ways to foster and encourage that goodwill to flourish.
Right. In our differences, to tolerate each other, and I think mostly understand each other, because when you understand a person's religion better, then you're automatically not as ignorant, and you're not intolerant because you know what it means to them.
Exactly. Without
having to, you know, become that religion.
Yeah.
You can understand what they're doing and the reason of it. You know?
Great. Well, I want to thank you so much for being our guest today. Our time has already run out.
Wow.
And time has kind of flown by. So I want to just really thank you for sharing your insights and your experience from your work in Afghanistan, and wish you the very best in everything that you're doing over there.
I appreciate this opportunity, Mr.
Thanks
Moss.
for coming. I appreciate it. You've been watching The Defining Moment for Creating the Culture of Conscience. You can find us on the internet at www.definingmoment.tv. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.